All righty. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First of all, let me just appreciate all the other presentations before, because this sort of wraps a lot of that stuff up in terms of youth, housing, et cetera, I think. And we'll talk a little bit about that at the very end. Let me first thank Tamara Aguilar, Delisa Tolbert, Yolanda Griffin, Roger Johnson. We started this process late. I was late as usual, and I sent some things in on Wednesday. LaShawn was looking for them on Monday, and they helped me put something together, I think, that sort of tells my story regarding workforce development. I want to say about the paradox of prosperity and widening economic gaps. Basically sort of supports what the manager referenced just a couple of hours ago about the widening gap. There's something called the Gini Index, G-I-N-I Index, and it's an economic term that sort of measures the inequality and wealth gaps in communities. And Charlotte and Mecklenburg County's wealth gap has been spreading over the last several decades. This doesn't happen overnight or over a few months. You know, it takes years before that gap to spread. And right now, what you see in Mecklenburg County is a widening economic gap. And why that's so important for us to address is a couple of things. When I chaired the school board, I used to ask the superintendent, how many third graders can't read who come from a household earning $100,000 a year? They couldn't find any. So economics, the social capital, et cetera, those things are really important. And I think that's why it's so important that we start trying to figure out how to close the economic gap and have more folk in the middle class. We're talking about safety in neighborhoods. You're talking about stronger public schools. You talk about just the general health of a community. It just works better when there's an appropriate spread of upper, middle, and lower income folk in a neighborhood. I'm sort of reminded that Mecklenburg County is the second largest banking center in the country. There's just tremendous benefits. But who's benefiting and who's left behind is what we need to try to pay attention to as a community, not just a county responsibility, but as a community. And to the extent that the county can stimulate or be a catalyst, that would be very important. I recall when I joined the board, the new group of county commissioners commissioned a study on racism in Mecklenburg County. And that made me think, in terms of going back to Mecklenburg County's history, that during slavery, 40% of Mecklenburg's population was African American. And today, 33% of Mecklenburg County's population is African American. And when you start looking at the challenges of who's on the bottom, I think you've heard me say this when Dina was around, it reflects back on something called the Kerner Commission, when there was a lot of resources, a lot of research, I should say. Who was on the bottom in terms of health? Who's on the bottom in terms of education? Who's on the bottom in terms of economics? And it was African Americans. So some of this stuff I'm going to juxtapose between white and African American, but it doesn't exclude Hispanics, Asians, et cetera, because to make Charlotte a great place to live, we got to raise the floor and the ceiling at the same time, and that includes everyone. Real quickly, who wants a living wage job? Or what are the barriers in the living wage ecosystem? A couple of times over the last 3 years I've been on the board, responses have been, well, people are satisfied where they are, they're afraid to take risks, they're concerned about the benefits cliff, et cetera. The folk I talk to would love to have a living wage job. And I would think that most of the folk that's out there that don't have a living wage job would love to have a job with great benefits, time off, 2-3 weeks, annual vacation, have some disposable funds to go out to dinner, et cetera. So I'm not sure who those folk are, but we'll talk a little bit about who wants a living wage job. Barriers, the barriers are consistent across all economic levels, whether it's challenges for house burden, child care, transportation, and we'll talk a little bit about those barriers. And we'll talk about the living wage ecosystem because it is broken in Arthur Griffin's perspective.
How long have you been in Charlotte?
All my life.
Mildred Littlejohn is not a fan of Charlotte's growth.
And I'm sick of everybody moving down here. They get better jobs. They get better places to stay. We've been here for a lifetime. It takes us hell to get a house.
We heard the same message from another native Charlottean.
For the people that live here, it makes it harder for us. Say more about that, like about what makes it harder. The job market is harder. I can say that for sure.
All right, let's see if I'm going to go back. Okay, you guys got it under control. This was a piece on WSOC News several weeks ago as they talked about the number of people coming into the Charlotte region. And they went out into the community interviewing residents about the impact of the 157 residents coming into this region. There were a couple of people, 2 or 3 people that they interviewed, and they specifically was concerned about not having access or availability to some of the good jobs. But I wanted you to hear that from, in their words, and with the passion that they were presenting when they talked to the news folk. And not only the concerns about not having access to good jobs, living wage jobs, they talked about the housing crunch, Mr. Chairman, about the cost of renting and the cost of buying a home. So these are the folk that are out there. They're indigenous, they're native, they've been around for a long time, and they're seeing folk come into Charlotte and take benefit of some of the great opportunities. Charlotte is a wonderful place to live and work and raise a family, and there's absolutely no question about the opportunities that are in this community. The questions are who benefits from those opportunities. You want me to go on to the next slide? Yeah, let's play the video so they can hear it if we can.
How long have you been in Charlotte?
All my life.
Mildred Littlejohn is not a fan of Charlotte's growth.
And I'm sick of everybody moving down here. They get better jobs. They get better places to stay. We've been here for a lifetime. It takes us hell to get a house.
We heard the same message from another native Charlottean.
For the people that live here, it makes it harder for us. Say more about that, like about what makes it harder. The job market is harder. I can say that for sure. How long have you been in Charlotte?
All my life.
Mildred Littlejohn is not a fan of Charlotte's growth.
And I'm sick of everybody moving down here. They get better jobs. They get better places to stay. We've been here for a lifetime. It takes us hell to get a house.
We heard the same message from another native Charlottean.
For the people that live here, it makes it harder for us. Say more about that, like about what makes it harder. The job market is harder. I can say that for sure.
You know, one of the things that, since I joined the Board of County Commissions, I asked staff to figure out how many of the BIP grants we've approved. And when you look at these grants that have been approved, it's well over 3,000 great jobs that have come into this community. And there's no linkage between what we do, what we say, and the jobs that are coming into this community. Roger's correct this morning when he said that the staff has changed the agreement in the voluntary portion of the contract in section 2.5. It's now asking how many local folk have you hired. Prior to the Economic Development Committee doing that, there's no real push to work with us locally or trying to identify the number of jobs that local people had a shot at. In fact, one of the companies, and I spoke to it earlier, Corning Optical, when I looked at their contract, they actually checked a box. There was, yes, I'll work with you, or no, I won't. And they actually checked the box to say, no, I won't. So it gives us a sense as to who our corporate partners are as relates to job opportunities. When you look at the quality of those jobs, it follows the sequence of those 5 areas, and I always forget those 5 areas. Finance, banking, business management and banking, technology, advanced manufacturing, and health sciences. They're a phenomenal job. This is just a snapshot of some of the jobs that have come through. But you have this health center, Atrium Novant. They're hiring registered nurses. They're hiring surgical techs. I served on, at your pleasure, a trustee at Central Piedmont Community College. And we were trying to get sonogrammers because at $65,000 a year, Atrium and Novant was just sucking them up. And the state wouldn't allow CPCC to offer that program because Piedmont Community College over here in Monroe was offering the same. So there's some politics in there, but there's a lot, surgical techs are available. There are a lot of career-type jobs that pay living wages available here in Mecklenburg County. We're just not connected to those particular jobs. Central Piedmont sort of plays a role as a connector. Did you see some of the people are close to us in terms of Medic, Honeywell, Novant, Duke Energy. What I'm looking for the county in terms of playing a catalyst is to serve as a connector in some manner. We may not be able to afford to do this alone, but in partnership, we could also serve as a connector, at least to those jobs that are coming in through the BIP. You know, I won't forget Commissioner Dunlap schooling me about the taxes that these corporations pay. There's no question about it. These corporations coming in, they increase the tax base. It's a benefit for all of us. But we also can provide an additional support if some of the local folk here in Mecklenburg County could get those jobs, and if we can prepare, since we know what those 5 areas are, just a ball pen full of individuals who are prepared to take some of those jobs. You know, we talk about, you know, who can we train? There is a, I can't think of the gentleman's name who started the program of which Renaissance West started out of Atlanta, but he said that there's $1 trillion worth of human assets that are buried in all these communities in America. And what he was talking about, folk that were completely disconnected, they were in the public assistance arena, but yet with the proper training, they could be productive, tax-paying residents of all of our communities around the country. One of the things that popped out at me on a number of presentations so far this morning, but also with this presentation, is when you simply look at who's receiving services from the county. The population is 33% African American, and almost across the board, the disproportionality is twice or more. So we have to find ways to figure out what's working, what's not working, and rather than talk sometimes in isolation about black infant mortality, the folk who are in Sheriff McFadden's hotel over there in terms of their ethnicity or race, we need to figure out what's going on, and some of those things we talked about a minute ago, which is the family. We're going to have to figure out something, and Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely right, but I think if people, not as a condition, and I don't want you to interpret it as a condition of services, but we need to make it clear that if you're getting services, that there is a level of expectation that we have in terms of sweat equity on your part so that we can be successful in helping people help themselves into sweat equity. This is a biggie because every time we talk about programs, education comes up. Now, why is that important? As a trustee at Central Piedmont, there are 6 Tesla programs in the country. One is at Central Piedmont. But to get into that program, you have to take a test that Tesla presents. If you don't pass the test, you can't get in the program and graduate with $50 an hour job or more. So education is so critically important, not just for youngsters who are going to college, but trying to get the living wage jobs. As I said to you, Atrium and Novant can't hire enough sonogrammers today. Surgical techs, registered nurses. So there are career paths that can get you to living wage jobs that are there, but we have to make sure that our children are getting the kind of education that will help them achieve that. And I'll give an example. I don't know if you saw a movie called Hidden Figures. It was about folk who were doing work, manual mathematical work, to help get John Glenn up into space. In the back area, there was a cadre of ladies that were doing manual work on calculators and other things. And NASA decided what they were going to do is bring in an IBM 360, one of the original big computers, right, that takes up a whole room. And this computer system was going to replace those ladies who were doing manual mathematics on calculators, et cetera. What do you think the young lady decided to do that was the supervisor of all the other young ladies? They were predominantly African-American women. She grabbed a book, she grabbed a manual, and said, we're going to learn how to operate this newfangled thing called its IBM 360. So it's within our capacity to provide the academic and support for our youngsters to develop the skills to be able to get successful jobs, not just college degree jobs, but jobs that pay living wages in terms of advanced manufacturing, et cetera. But you can't even get into the training if you can't pass the test. To be a registered nurse, to go into nursing at UNC Charlotte, to go into nursing at Central Piedmont, you can't get into the RN curriculum if you can't pass the T's. And as a trustee, I say, what is T's? It's the test of essential academic skills. And it's required in North Carolina if you're going to try to take the RN curriculum. So education is so important. And so why do I come back to education? Linda Darling Hammond, someone I worked with ages ago, she said, Arthur, this technological society that's coming up, now this is almost 30, almost 20 years ago, no, a little bit more than that. She said, for our kids to be successful, you have to have strong foundational skills, literacy, numeration, critical thinking. She said if our youngsters can master those skills, because she said technology is going to change every year. And boy, did she predict technology changing every year. But she said they wouldn't get left behind if they had these skills. So we're going to have to make sure that our partner, and I know that we love CMS, I love CMS, it's my school, but we got to work with our partners to make sure when they graduate college ready or career ready if they're going to take advantage of the wonderful opportunities in this community. I'm not going to tell you, there was a big fuss at CMS about 30-point gap. Today in almost everything except Math 1, the gap is at 40 points. So they've done great things in terms of their performance with growth and some other issues. Fundamental that Dr. Linda Darling Hammond said, strong foundational skills if they're going to be successful. The other piece that I wanted to share with you is what's happening at the collegiate level. There's an interactive dashboard that the UNC system has. And I would say Google it, all of you, Google it, and look at the four-year graduation rate of kids at any of the member institutions. They're not very well. And if you look at some of the institutions or HBCUs, they're not very well. We're going to have to strengthen up. And it's not the institution's fault. It's the youngsters that are getting into those systems that are not prepared to be successful. So look at the entire, transition and trajectory of education if you want to see folk being successful. There's a huge gap in terms of youngsters getting jobs today that's coming into Mecklenburg County. Who are they? They're educated, they're trained, and they're able to access this ecosystem called living wage jobs. Alice Communities. I had never heard of that. To Roger Johnson said, have you ever heard of Alice Community? What is Alice Communities? Asset limited, income constrained, and employed. Okay? These are the folk who, not paycheck to paycheck, but they really need to advance themselves into the middle class so they'll have some disposable income to take their families on vacation, et cetera, and to be able to pay for different things for their children in terms of supporting them. Look at this. This is the census data, 2024. The last day this person was employed before being furloughed, she shared this data with me. So it's as of September 2024, and what you'll see is half of the African-American households earn less than $75,000. Over half, 67% of white households earn greater than $75,000. So in terms of people closing the wealth gap, we got to make sure that the middle class, as the manager said earlier, is stronger and strengthened here in Mecklenburg County. It is absolutely no question that we can do that with the type of jobs that are coming in. The young lady who helped me with this with the Census Bureau, she said, Commissioner Griffin, look at $200,000 or more. Whereas we think things are happening, look at the disparity between African-American households and white households that's making $200,000 or greater. 6% to 25%. Okay. We got to do better. And we need to figure out this thing that the chairman spoke of earlier about affordable housing. People are under great housing pressure because as we can't move people into these wonderful jobs that are coming into Mecklenburg County, other folk are moving in from San Francisco, Newport Beach, California, from Florida, from Canada. That's putting pressure on the housing supply. And therefore, demand goes up, prices go up. So if we don't work hard to close the gap in terms of that middle class, those housing pressures is going to continue to escalate over the next period. Workforce development profile. This is a lot of information, but just look at that top line. Paycheck jobs. That's not middle class folks working at Taco Bell, et cetera. But that could be the beginning steps to a middle class, a middle income type job. But look at the line that goes across from opportunity jobs to career jobs. But the line that I highlighted was barriers. And we talked about it this morning. We'll continue to talk about it until we start to get the community together to address these barriers. Housing instability, criminal justice environment, lack of hard skills or soft skills. You hear about child care, transportation, limited guidance, career jobs. You need a little bit more time in terms of going to school and pursuing an extended education. I met with Dr. Dietermeyer a couple of weeks ago, and she said she's willing to truncate some of the courses. Rather than 18 months, maybe 12 months. Rather than 12 months, maybe 6 months. But there are partners out there who are willing to try to work with us to make sure that we can get people the type of education to be successful. I drive by Siemens every morning, And for the last decade, Siemens has had welders, machinists, and millwright workers. Okay? And coming across Shopton Road, probably 60% of the driver's license tags going into Siemens are from South Carolina. Okay? Somebody talked about a map. I said, let me go show this map. When I was around here early on, it was called a wedge. That's why when I first started with the county, people said crescents. I said, what do you mean by crescent? I never heard of a crescent. We've gone from a wedge to a crescent. Dr. Chetty says 27 years. So in 2034, I don't know what the map's going to look like if we don't intervene as a community at this particular point. So I would say to my colleagues, there is a widening gap. We have that opportunity in leadership positions with the county and with the city and with the state. What is the solution? My solution, and hopefully you will also agree, is an upward mobility residential academy. We purchased the old Graham Street site from Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools. There are a lot of schools. Had we purchased the Wilmore School and some other schools, you could probably have a park in the South End or down in that park. But Upward Mobility Academy is where you would get youngsters, and it's probably about 700 youngsters, and Dr. Washington, correct me if I'm wrong, about 700 kids from age 13 to 19 have birthed every year in Mecklenburg County, and from about age 20 to 24, you have about 2,000. And that's been consistent from 2021, 22. I don't have 23 yet. I don't know if 24 is out. But what do you think if we grab some youngsters that are 19 years old with a brand new baby that comes to Medicaid or get WIC, and they find themselves in a residential facility where they can get health care, affordable housing is taken care of, Central Piedmont's on campus, after school, before school, child care is there, life navigation is there. You're solving several things. One, the family is not going to have a lot of juvenile delinquents, Commissioner Dunlap, but you also will have opportunities in that particular facility so that their health care needs will be taken care of, their child care needs will be taken care of, and you're up and out. It's a contractual agreement with the individual resident, and if that's something that they're not interested in later, they can get back in line in terms of housing for all the other programs that are here in Mecklenburg County, the county supports, as well as the city of Charlotte. It's different because some of the programs today are voluntary. There's no commitment to do the work. This would have to be reflected in the individual residents doing the work. Some people would say it's tough love, but it's about time we start doing tough love if we're going to make a difference. So I'm going through because I want to try to answer your questions. And my time is up there. Okay, already. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry it went over, but
No,
I had a lot to say.
no, that's fine. We actually went over 10 minutes on the last block. So this is what I'd like to do, colleagues. We do have a break after this. There's about 15 minutes for comments or questions. What I am going to ask is people truncate it. And that's cool. Truncate it as best you can so that we will take our break at 2:30. So I'm asking for a minute-ish for comments or questions. Who, can I see, show of hands, who has something? Commissioner Townsend Ingram, then Commissioner Dunlap, and Commissioner Powell, Commissioner Leek.
Thank you. I think you know that most of us, look to your wisdom and the information that you've gathered, certainly over the years. And this is not for anybody to answer right now, but just some things that I saw from, one, being a parent, two, being a professional who I did not realize. I didn't know I was in the Alice community all my life. And three, teaching in CMS and being a parent, there are some things that I think that just we kind of miss. The reality and the perception are just kind of two different things. I think that, in my opinion, CMS is stuck with preparing and measuring our kids for something that the world does not measure. They're not preparing them adequately because they have to be measured on something else according to state standards. So that's one thing. The other thing is, and this is some kind of a cycle that I've been stuck on myself, even if you're a professional, and I want to see the gap between, the racial gap between white and black who have professional degrees, whether it's a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or doctorate, between the races, just the disparities there. I won't even tell you the maximum amount of income that I've made with my 3 degrees in my years, and it's because you get in this situation where you need to take the job that you can find to deal with the socioeconomic issues that you have right at that moment to take care of your family. So you take what you can get. There's no such thing as negotiating your salary up. So you get stuck in this wheel. And then by the time you're in it, you can't train for more. You can't, there are so many variables that you have to use. But those are my observations. And I'm not sure, I don't know if there's really a question in there other than the fact that there's so much work to do.
Well, I would say the Upward Mobility Residential Academy would be available for people who are not receiving those services, but the classes and programs would be there, so that it's not just that group of individuals, but it's something for the community if space was available. So if people wanted to upskill and didn't have the cash, we probably would be able to serve them at that facility as well as the residents. The other piece on education, I'm at the yield to my colleagues. We haven't been able to get MEC pre-K, so college and career readiness, I'm not sure.
Commissioner Dunlap.
Yeah, I think one of the questions that I've been wanting an answer to, Arthur, is, well, let me just say this. Oftentimes, people who have been here historically, like yourself, talk about the crescent and the wedge. And so when I think about those communities, for those of us who've been here, I can recall when Hidden Valley was an all-white community. It is turned historically black, and it is now turning back the other way. North Charlotte, the NODA community, Davidson, was a white community. And then during urban renewal, it became a black community because the blacks were forced out of uptown. And so when you still see these changes in communities like that, when we refer to the wedge and the crescent, are we still talking about the same people?
You are talking in terms of the numbers, in terms of the majority numbers, they're in transition now, okay? The wedge edges are in transition. You don't have a lot of people moving on Catherine Simmons Avenue, for example, but you do have people moving on to Beatty's Road. So those are changing, but I think you can still categorize them as crescent and wedge, because one slide I didn't put in here, but I'll send it to all of you. It has the zip codes of everybody that's on food stamps, Work First, WIC, low energy, et cetera. And that wedge swings all the way out towards the university. So the crescent really is moving. It's a moving target right now, George. But I'll send to all of the board members the slide that has the zip codes for everybody that's on those benefit slide.
Thank you.
All right.
Commissioner Powell.
Thank you. Thank you for your passion. I love it when you talk about tough love and high expectations, because we need more of that. And I love when you're talking about all these investments that we've made, like in the BIPs and the TIGs and all the things. I love acronyms sometimes. All the things that the very wealthy corporate entities want from us. And the fact that anyone would check the no box is disturbing. And, you know, Commissioner Altman also talked about this earlier, and Roger, you know, there's, by law, we can only say that we can only have these certain requirements. For the past couple of years, we've done way better. Like we've said what's important to us. If you want this from us, you know, we want something from you. Like show your willingness to be a good partner in Mecklenburg County. Show your willingness to commit to the things that the community needs. And so when Commissioner Altman was talking earlier, like we are an economic engine for the state. We are huge for the state of North Carolina. We can't just lay down and just be the same as every other county. We have to be creative. We have to have tough love. We have to have higher expectations. And so keep talking about that because I'm with you. I'd like to see a map. You showed a 1970 map and a 2007 map. I'd like to see a 2024 map, if we could see that sometime. But thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, but I do give credit to Dr. Johnson, Roger, and his team. At least they've moved some of that to Section 2.5, where they're saying, will you hire local? And it's up to them now to get the information back to us as to who's hiring local.
I give credit to everyone. Like, it takes a team to make this stuff happen, and thanks for the willingness. And, you know, everybody has different skill set. I like how you dive into the data like you do, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Leak.
Let me thank my seat partner here and my school board chairperson when we served together. Thank you, Arthur, for the information that you shared with us. When you said Seaman, I remember taking 4 young graduates from law school at Chapel Hill to get a job at Seaman. 2 of them were white. In my car with me driving, you know that? And 2 were black. One was Mr. Freeman's son. And I took them out there because they were advertising for workers. They wouldn't interview them. Said they didn't have the time that afternoon to do that. So a lot of times we are confronted with other negatives or threats people sometimes feel when your level of education may be equally as high or higher than those who are already there. But they were very disappointed in not being able to even be interviewed that afternoon after we had made arrangements for them to go. I took them out there, I think my first or second year on the county commissioners looking for jobs for those young brothers. And I call them brothers because we were in the car together and we were looking to provide for them to move beyond the middle class. We don't have a middle class anymore. When you talk about politics and you talk about economics, we have a long ways to go. We don't even, I was listening to a program talking about budgeting and how we as a people have not been taught about budgeting or even transferring monies to the next generation of our children because we have not lived to even have those kind of jobs. So thank you for sharing that information with us. My time is up. And thank you so much for being who you are and what you are.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rodriguez-McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just was wanting to find out, was that last page about the Upward Mobility Residential Academy, is that like something that you're thinking you would like to see happen? That's like an idea of, hey, can we find a property and have all of these?
As you recall, Commissioner, when we were having the debate about the Graham Street site, I was saying, wow, that would be a great opportunity because we could gut it, convert it into residential apartments, create the learning spaces that would be necessary for the life navigation and social work and health care. That campus is perfect for that, and it solves several of our issues. One is affordable housing, certainly in terms of health care for young mothers, and usually, and I don't know this for a fact, but if there are mothers with young boys an opportunity to make sure those kids doesn't end up in the juvenile delinquency ranks. So that was a thought that I had that I would love for all of my colleagues and the manager to consider, but with all the other priorities, I'm still going to advocate for that. We'll see where it comes out.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right.
Let me come back to Commissioner Dunlap.
So real question, Mr. Manager, at some point, we're going to report on the work that Lashondra and her team did on that property? Are we not prepared for that yet?
Not prepared today, no.
Okay.
But I do want to hit you right on Commissioner SRM's question. I too had a similar inquiry whether or not this is a concept that currently exists in some other jurisdiction that you came across, or this is solely interests that you have and would like staff to further explore. Are there some other cities that have a similar model?
I'd have to look and see. My research is here locally. I served on the board of the Renaissance West Community Initiative off of West Boulevard. I was involved with them as they were putting that together. I think Laura Clark was a staff person who kind of put those things together. The concept was we would get the school system to build a school, we would get the private sector to build a daycare center, and we would get the housing authority and developers to build nice brand new apartments and a community center. The concept was that all of those pieces would be there. What they forgot was how do you get the residents to participate? And so the challenge now is I can't get residents to participate because they're enjoying the school, they're enjoying a nice new apartment, they're enjoying daycare. So why do I need to do anything else? I think if we do the tough love and just say, hey, look, we're looking for get you into career jobs, and people will still sign up for that. But I'll look and see if Brown Institute and others have this model, but it's just going off of lessons learned here in Mecklenburg County off of West Boulevard right now. Okay?
So before you go, Arthur, I do want to offer a comment or a thought before we go to break. One, outstanding presentation. Support everything that you're suggesting. I do think that there's a role for the private sector in this academy, a huge role, and that would be really helpful. But the other thing that I also want to, because in my presentation, I did this, and sometimes when we see these presentations and we tee up and we talk about the disproportional nature of the disparities, I think sometimes we create this narrative, and I'm not saying you did this, Arthur. I'm just talking just generally. I know that I do this, but I think sometimes we create this narrative, particularly when we're talking about African American community and families, that I don't know if we really level set on the scale of what we're trying to solve to, and I mean it in these terms. When you look at the African American community here, about 14%, and please staff correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this number is fairly accurate. About 14% of the African American community actually lives in poverty, would be considered living in poverty, somewhere in that range, I believe. But even if we said it was 20%, that's 20% too much. But it also doesn't lend itself to the fact that we have a lot of upwardly mobile families, a lot of people in the missing middle that we can move into other buckets as well. So if we're solving to that 20% number, to me, it's a heavy lift, but it's not as heavy as sometimes the narrative would make it seem like 80% of African American families are impoverished or not taking advantage of what we have in the community or not doing well. And so I only say that to say is that I'm trying to be more mindful about the narratives that we push out there, because sometimes we're pushing out this level of scale that may not be completely accurate. I think the disproportionality in what we see in the data is one thing, but the scale is also something else that I think we should be a little bit more mindful of as we are approaching all of these subjects. So that's just my thought on it.
No, I think you're spot on. But as we look at the community, whether it's white or black, Hispanic or whatever, you look at the health of a community.
Right, that's right.
And when you look at some of the institutions that may be impacted for one reason or the other, I picked the black church, for example. Not only people are not attending as often, but folk don't have as much money to put in the plate.
Right, that's right.
So you look at institutions, whether it's a white community, black community, Jewish community, any community, how do we keep the institutions healthy? Because the institutions are the ones that are going to provide services that government and private sector is not doing.
Sure.
So I'm kind of looking holistically from that perspective to make sure there's enough oomph there so that institutions can be healthy, so that the communities could be healthy. Now, just last this, now you say you have to go. But coming out of segregation here in Mecklenburg County, when the schools desegregated, Mr. Chairman, the kids who were ready to go, prior to desegregation, we had kids going to Harvard, MIT, all those places, but it was like onesies and twosies. When schools desegregated, those kids who were ready took advantage of all those wonderful opportunities and just soared. And so if we had people ready, then they'll have the choice of soaring or doing what they want to do. It's about choices and not mandatory moving widgets on a board. Thank you very much, y'all.
Thank you.